A soldier finds a pregnant Japanese woman abandoned on a muddy road during World War II, forcing him to make an impossible choice. With enemy patrols closing in and artillery thundering in the distance, he must decide, follow orders or follow his conscience. What begins as a moment of mercy soon becomes a desperate fight for survival, as they take shelter in an abandoned farmhouse while the woman's labor begins. But there's more to this encounter than meets the eye. Her husband was an American citizen, making her unborn child an American by birthright. As German boots stomp through the countryside and village whispers threaten to expose them, the unlikely pair forms a bond deeper than the war that divides them. When the baby arrives in the dead of night, their fates become forever intertwined. Will they escape the shadows of war to find peace in a world determined to keep them apart? And what price will they pay for a chance at happiness in a time of hatred? Dawn broke over the muddy French countryside, painting the sky in shades of pale pink and gold. A ragged line of wagons creaked along a narrow back road, surrounded by tired American and French soldiers. The men walked with rifles ready, eyes scanning the misty fields for danger. In the third wagon from the back, Hana Sakamoto sat huddled against the morning chill. Her small hands, chapped from cold, clutched a string of wooden prayer beads. Next to her heart, she kept a worn photograph of her husband, Kenji. His kind eyes seemed to watch over her even now, when she needed him most. Hana shifted uncomfortably, trying to find a position that would ease the pressure on her swollen belly. The baby inside her kicked, a reminder of the life she carried even as the world around her fell apart. She was far from home, far from family, a Japanese woman alone in a war that had taken everything. "Halt!" The shout came from the front of the convoy. The wagon jolted to a stop, making Hana grab the rough wooden side to steady herself. A young American soldier passed by, his boots splashing in the mud. "Broken wheel up front," he muttered to his companion. "Gonna be a while." Hana listened to the soldiers talk, picking out words from their English. She had learned the language from Kenji, who had been born in America before his family returned to Japan. Now those lessons might save her life, and her child's. Near the lead wagon, voices grew louder. A tall American sergeant with a weather-beaten face argued with a French officer, pointing at the wagons. "We can't keep dragging the weak ones," the sergeant said. "Germans could be anywhere. We need to move faster." The French officer shook his head. "These are people, not cargo. We cannot simply—" "They're prisoners," the sergeant cut in, "and my orders are to get the healthy ones to the camp by nightfall." Hana felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. She knew what happened to those deemed too weak to continue. She had seen others left behind in previous days. A soldier approached her wagon. "You, woman, get down," he ordered, pointing at the ground. Hana gathered her thin shawl around her shoulders and moved slowly to the edge of the wagon. The ground seemed far away, and her legs trembled with weakness. As she tried to step down, her foot slipped in the mud. She fell hard, landing on her side. Pain shot through her hip and back. The baby kicked frantically inside her. "Get up!" the soldier said, already turning away. "We're leaving in 5 minutes." Hana struggled to her knees, but her legs wouldn't support her. The pain in her side made it hard to breathe. She watched in growing panic as soldiers began to repair the broken wheel, working quickly. The sergeant strode back along the line of wagons. "Let's move! Anyone not aboard gets left." Hana reached out a hand, trying to call for help, but her voice came out as a whisper. The wagons began to move, one by one. "Wait," she said, the word barely audible. "Please wait." But no one heard, or perhaps no one cared. The last wagon rumbled past, and the sound of creaking wheels and marching feet faded into the distance. Cold mist curled around Hana as she sat alone on the muddy road, one hand on her belly, the other still clutching her prayer beads. "Be strong," she whispered to her unborn child. "Your father would say we must be strong." The road stretched empty before and behind her. Hana pulled herself to her feet, wincing at the pain in her ankle. She wrapped her shawl tighter and began to walk, limping with each step. One foot, then another, she told herself. It was what Kenji had always said when things seemed impossible. Just the next step. That is all you need to think about. The clouds hung low and gray, threatening rain. Hana searched for any sign of shelter, a barn, a shed, anything to get out of the cold. Each step sent a jolt of pain up her leg, but she kept moving. A twinge gripped her belly, stronger than the baby's normal kicks. Hana stopped, breathing deeply until it passed. "Not yet, little one," she thought. "Not here, not like this." By midday, exhaustion dragged at her. She found a small thicket of trees near the roadside and sank down in their shelter. The ground was damp, but it felt good to rest. She leaned against a tree trunk and closed her eyes. In her mind, she could hear Kenji's voice, so clear it almost seemed he sat beside her. Courage isn't about being fearless, he'd once told her. It's about feeling fear but doing what's right anyway. Hana smiled at the memory. I'm trying, she whispered. I'm trying to be brave, Kenji. Another pain gripped her middle, and she gasped. Too soon, she thought. Please, not yet. As the pain eased, a new sound reached her ears. Footsteps, crunching on the gravel road. Hana froze, hardly daring to breathe. The steps came closer, then stopped. She heard the metallic click of a rifle being readied. Hello? A man's voice called out. American by the sound of it. Hana remained silent, heart pounding. Branches parted and a young soldier appeared, rifle pointed toward her. His eyes widened in surprise. Ma'am, he said, lowering his weapon slightly. You're from the convoy? Private Sam Taylor had never expected to find a pregnant Japanese woman sitting alone in the French countryside. He approached carefully, noting her swollen ankle and the exhaustion written across her face. Are you hurt? He asked, then repeated the question in his limited French. Êtes-vous blessé? The woman looked at him with fear in her dark eyes, but also something else. Hope, maybe, or desperation. Slowly, she pointed to her ankle, then to her rounded belly. Sam lowered his rifle completely. He'd been sent back to check the road for stragglers, but his orders had been clear. Keep moving. Don't slow down for anyone. The convoy was already miles ahead, but he couldn't leave her here. Enemy or not, she was a woman about to have a baby, alone in a war zone. Here, he said, unscrewing his canteen. Water? She took it with shaking hands and drank gratefully. Thank you, she said in accented but clear English. Sam blinked in surprise. You speak English? A little, she replied. My husband, he taught me. He was American. Sam knelt beside her, his decision already made. His commanding officer would be furious, but some things mattered more than orders. I'm Sam, he said, tearing a strip from his undershirt to wrap around her ankle. Sam Taylor. Hana, she replied softly. Hana Sakamoto. In the distance, the dull boom of artillery rumbled like thunder. The war was never far away. There's a farmhouse up ahead, Sam said, helping Hana to her feet. Saw it on patrol yesterday. Looks empty. We can rest there. Figure things out. Hana nodded, leaning on his arm as they began to walk. Thank you, she said again. The words hung in the air between them, bridging the gap between enemy and ally, stranger and friend. The farmhouse stood alone behind a row of wind-battered trees. Its windows were dark, the door half open. Sam guided Hana along the overgrown path, his pistol drawn just in case. Wait here, he said when they reached the porch. Let me check inside first. The house was empty but for dust and shadows. Sam moved from room to room, alert for any sign of danger. He found a small bedroom with a cot, a kitchen with a rusty stove, and a pantry with a few forgotten supplies. A tin of stale biscuits, some dried herbs hanging from the rafters. All clear, he called, helping Hana inside. It's not much, but it's better than the road. He settled her on the cot and knelt to examine her ankle. The skin was swollen and bruised, but the bone didn't seem broken. Just a bad sprain, I think, he said, wrapping it carefully. Best not to walk on it too much for a few days. Hana nodded, her hand resting on her belly. The baby, she said. Not yet time, but... How far along are you? Sam asked, worry creasing his brow. 8 months, I think. She looked down. It is hard to be sure. Sam shared his rations, a chocolate bar, some hardtack, and beef jerky. As they ate, the light outside began to fade. He found a stub of candle in a drawer and lit it, placing it on a chipped saucer. Here, he said, draping his army coat around Hana's shoulders. Get some rest. We'll figure out what to do in the morning. Hana settled back on the cot, her eyes already closing with exhaustion. Sam watched as her breathing slowed and deepened. In the flickering candlelight, her face looked young and vulnerable. Kenji, she murmured in her sleep, one hand reaching out. The baby. Our baby. Sam turned away, a lump in his throat. He took up position by the window, watching the darkening countryside. Out there, the war raged on. In here, for a moment at least, there was peace. Night settled over the farmhouse. Sam kept watch, cleaning his rifle to keep his hands busy. His mind wandered to memories of home, of Grace, his wife who had died of pneumonia just before he shipped out. Her face seemed to float before him in the darkness. What would Grace think of him now? Helping a Japanese woman, one of the enemy? But looking at Hana, Sam couldn't see an enemy. He saw a mother trying to protect her child, just like anyone would. A soft cry broke the silence. Sam turned to see Hana sitting up, eyes wide with fear. Just a dream, he said quietly. You're safe. Hana pressed a hand to her heart, trying to slow her breathing. "I was back home," she said. "In Yokohama." Before the bombs fell, Sam moved to sit on the edge of the cot. "You lived in Yokohama?" Hana nodded. From her pocket, she drew the photograph she'd been holding earlier. In the candlelight, Sam could make out the image of a smiling young man in an American suit. "Kenji," Hana said, her finger tracing the face. "My husband. He grew up in California. We met when he came to teach English in Japan." "What happened to him?" Sam asked, though he could guess. "He was arrested. After Pearl Harbor." Her voice grew tight. "They said he was a spy. He wasn't. He just loved both countries." Sam felt a familiar ache in his chest, the same pain he'd felt when he lost Grace. "I'm sorry," he said simply. Hana studied his face. "You lost someone too." It wasn't a question, but Sam answered anyway. "My wife, Grace, last year." They sat in silence, two people connected by loss in a world torn apart by hate. "Kenji said our baby would be American," Hana said finally. "Born of two worlds. He wanted to take us to California, to his parents' farm." Sam looked at her with new understanding. This wasn't just about helping a stranded woman. It was about honoring the dream of a family caught between countries, about doing what was right when the world had gone wrong. "We'll get you somewhere safe," he promised. "You and your baby." Outside, footsteps crunched in the gravel. Sam's hand flew to his pistol. He motioned for Hana to stay quiet and doused the candle with his fingers. From the darkened window, Sam watched a German patrol moving through the abandoned farms. 6 soldiers checking buildings one by one. They were 3 houses away and coming closer. "Come on," he whispered, guiding Hana toward a small pantry at the back of the kitchen. "We need to hide." The pantry was barely big enough for both of them. Sam pulled the door nearly closed, leaving just a crack to see through. Hana pressed against him in the darkness, her breathing quick and shallow. Heavy boots thumped on the porch. The front door creaked open. "Dirk Suchenzida's house," a gruff voice ordered. "Search the house." Flashlight beams cut through the darkness, sweeping across dusty furniture. Sam felt Hana stiffen as a contraction gripped her. She buried her face against his shoulder to muffle a cry of pain. The German soldiers moved through the house quickly, opening cupboards, checking under the bed. One of them stepped into the kitchen, his light playing over the stove, the table. Sam held his breath as the beam approached the pantry door. If they were found, he'd have to fight. A fight he couldn't win. 6 against 1, with Hana to protect. But the soldier turned away, saying something to his companions. Boots thumped back toward the front door. A moment later, they were gone. Sam waited 10 minutes before daring to open the pantry door. The house was silent again. "They're gone," he whispered, helping Hana back to the cot. "But they'll be back. We need to move at first light." Before sleeping, Sam tore a page from his notebook and scribbled a message in French, which he left on the kitchen table. "In need of mercy. Please forgive trespass." It wasn't much, but it felt right to acknowledge the shelter they'd borrowed. That night they slept in shifts, Sam watching for the first few hours, then Hana insisting he rest while she kept vigil. Outside, the distant rumble of trucks reminded them that the war was never far away. Before dawn, Sam scavenged the farmyard for anything useful. In a tumble-down barn, he found an old door that could serve as a makeshift stretcher. He lined it with hay to make it more comfortable. "It's not fancy," he said when he showed it to Hana, "but it'll get you across the fields without putting weight on that ankle." Hana helped as much as she could, binding the stretcher with rope and gathering what little food remained. She seemed stronger after a night's rest, her face set with quiet determination. The morning was cold, the spring wind cutting through their clothes. Sam helped Hana onto the stretcher and lifted it carefully. "Which way?" Hana asked as they left the farmhouse behind. "Away from the roads," Sam replied. "Less chance of running into patrols." They moved slowly across muddy fields, Sam checking his compass occasionally to keep their direction. Hana hummed softly to herself, a melody Sam didn't recognize. "What's that song?" he asked during a brief rest. "A lullaby," Hana said. "My mother sang it to me. I will sing it to my child." As the sun climbed higher, Sam spotted a thin wisp of smoke rising from a cottage near the edge of a small wood. He set the stretcher down behind a hedgerow. "Someone's there," he said. "Could be friendly, could be trouble. Wait here while I check." But Hana caught his sleeve. "We go together," she said firmly. "I cannot run if there is danger. Better to face it side by side." Sam couldn't argue with her logic. He helped her up, and together they approached the cottage, moving slowly and keeping to whatever cover they could find. As they drew closer, they could see an elderly woman hanging laundry on a line. A small vegetable garden grew beside the cottage, and chickens scratched in the yard. She looks like a local, Sam whispered. Not military. Maybe she can help. Maybe, Hana agreed, but her eyes were wary. War had taught them both to be careful about trust. Sam squared his shoulders and stepped into the open. Hello? He called out in his broken French. S'il vous plaît, nous avons besoin d'aide. Please, we need help. The woman turned, startled. She was in her 50s, perhaps, with gray-streaked hair and a face lined by years of hard work. She stared at the strange pair, an American soldier and a pregnant Japanese woman, with undisguised shock. Who are you? She demanded in French, reaching for a garden hoe that leaned against the wall. Papers! Show me your papers! Sam raised his hands to show he meant no harm. American? He said, pointing to himself. Then, gesturing to Hana, she needs help. Baby coming. Please. The woman's eyes narrowed as she studied Hana's condition. Some internal struggle played across her face, suspicion warring with compassion. My son, she said slowly in French, was killed by a bomb. American bomb? German bomb? Who can say? All the same to him now. She pointed to a small cross visible in her garden. Sam understood enough to feel the weight of her words. I'm sorry, he said. Désolé. Hana stepped forward, one hand on her belly, the other reaching out to the woman. Please, she said simply, for the child. Something in Hana's voice, in her eyes, seemed to reach the woman. She sighed deeply, then lowered the hoe. Come, she said, gesturing toward the door. Quickly, before someone sees you. Inside, the cottage was small but neat. A fire burned in the hearth, and the smell of fresh bread filled the air. The woman, Madame Lefebvre, she introduced herself, helped Hana to a chair and examined her swollen ankle with practiced hands. Bad sprain, she confirmed, echoing Sam's diagnosis. Rest, cold water, and time. She cut thick slices of bread and offered them with a bit of cheese. As they ate this simple meal, the best they'd had in days, Madame Lefebvre asked their story in a mixture of French and English. Sam explained as best he could, with Hana filling in details. How she had been separated from the convoy, how Sam had found her, their night in the abandoned farmhouse, the German patrol. When they finished, Madame Lefebvre was quiet for a long moment. Then she took Hana's hand and Sam's hand, joining them in her own weathered ones. War makes strangers of us all, she said, but kindness makes us family again. She led them in a simple prayer, asking for protection and healing in soft French words. Sam didn't understand it all, but he felt the meaning in his heart. As they knelt together by the hearth, American, Japanese, French, the walls that divided them seemed to fall away, leaving only 3 human beings sharing a moment of peace in a world at war. Morning light filtered through lace curtains as Hana woke in Madame Lefebvre's spare room. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Not in the prisoner convoy, not in the abandoned farmhouse, but in a real bed with clean sheets. The baby kicked inside her, a reminder of the precious life she carried. A soft knock came at the door. It's raining, Madame Lefebvre said, entering with a steaming cup of herb tea. You and your soldier friend must stay in the hayloft today. The village gossips have sharp eyes. Hana accepted the tea gratefully. Thank you for your kindness, she said. We won't bring trouble to your door. Madame smiled, the wrinkles around her eyes deepening. Trouble finds us all in wartime, child, but we choose whether to meet it with fear or courage. After a simple breakfast of porridge, Madame led them to the small barn behind the cottage. A wooden ladder stretched up to a hayloft filled with fresh straw and old blankets. It's not much, she apologized, but you'll be warm and dry. I'll bring food at midday. Sam helped Hana up the ladder, supporting her weight as she climbed. The loft was cozy, with a tiny window that looked out over fields now streaked with rain. Rest, Sam told her, arranging blankets into a makeshift bed. I'll keep watch. But as the morning wore on, Sam found himself talking instead of watching. He told Hana about his hometown in Pennsylvania, the small farm where he'd grown up, his meeting Grace at a county fair when they were both 17. She could bake a pie that would make you cry, he said, smiling at the memory. And she always knew what to say when things got hard. Like what? Hana asked, massaging her belly as a mild contraction passed. Sam thought for a moment. She'd say, the good Lord doesn't give us more than we can handle. He just overestimates us sometimes. He laughed softly. She had a way of making even the darkest days seem brighter. Hana nodded, understanding in her eyes. Kenji was like that too, always hopeful. She shifted position, wincing slightly. He believed our child would have a better life, even with the war. Tell me about him, Sam said, genuinely curious. Your husband. Hana's face softened. Kenji was a teacher, English and history. He grew up in California but came to Japan to find his roots. We met at a cherry blossom festival. She smiled at the memory. He was so tall, always bumping his head on the door frames in my parents' house. How did you end up here? In France? Hana's smile faded. After Pearl Harbor, Japanese Americans were sent to camps. Kenji was visiting his parents when it happened. He never came home. She swallowed hard. I was taken to a detention center in Yokohama. When the city was bombed, they moved us. Ship after ship, camp after camp. Until France. Sam sat with her words, feeling the weight of what she'd endured. And the baby? Our miracle, Hana said, her hand caressing her belly. Kenji never knew. I found out after he was gone. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the patter of rain on the roof and the occasional distant rumble of military vehicles on the main road. What will you do? Sam asked finally. After the baby comes? Find Kenji's family in California, Hana said, determination in her voice. They have a farm in a place called Fresno. They should know they have a grandchild. Sam nodded. It was a good plan, better than most had in these uncertain times. A sudden noise from below made them both freeze. Footsteps on gravel, voices approaching. Sam moved to the window, peering cautiously through the grimy glass. Two men stood in Madame Lefebvre's yard, gesturing toward the cottage. Their clothes marked them as villagers, not soldiers, but their faces were hard with suspicion. Strangers, one said loudly in French, near the woods last night. Could be spies or deserters. Madame Lefebvre emerged from the cottage, wiping her hands on her apron. What nonsense, Marcel, she said firmly. Who would spy on an old woman and her chickens? The Germans are offering rewards, the other man said, for information about enemies hiding in the village. Then go tell them about the rats in your cellar, Madame replied sharply. That's the only thing hiding around here. The men continued to argue with her, but Madame stood her ground. Finally, with reluctant nods, they turned to leave. We're watching, one called over his shoulder, for the good of the village. When they were gone, Sam exhaled slowly. We can't stay, he said. We're putting her in danger. Hana nodded sadly. Tonight, she agreed. We should leave tonight. The rest of the day passed in tense waiting. Hana dozed fitfully, exhaustion catching up with her. Sam kept watch, his mind racing with plans and worries. Where could they go? How would they travel with Hana's condition worsening? The baby could come any day now. As dusk fell, Madame climbed to the loft with a basket of food and news that made Sam's heart sink. German patrols have increased, she said in hushed tones. They've set up checkpoints on all the main roads. But, she added, her eyes brightening, there is hope. Father Joseph. Father Joseph? Sam repeated. Our village priest. He has helped Allied soldiers before, guiding them to safety through the old smugglers' tunnels. I've sent word to him. He will help you. Sam felt a rush of gratitude. Thank you, he said, taking the old woman's weathered hands in his own. For everything. Madame smiled, then grew serious. There is something else you should know. She looked at Hana. Your baby. It comes soon. I've seen enough births to know the signs. Days, not weeks. Hana's hand went to her belly. I know, she said softly. I can feel it. Madame nodded. All the more reason to reach Father Joseph quickly. Rest now. Eat. I'll come for you when the village sleeps. After she left, Sam and Hana shared the simple meal. Bread, cheese, and a small flask of watery soup. They ate in silence, each lost in thought. Sam, Hana said finally, if something happens to me... Don't talk that way, Sam interrupted. You're going to be fine, both of you. Hana shook her head. We must speak of hard things sometimes. If I don't make it, promise me you'll take my baby to Kenji's family, in Fresno. Sam wanted to refuse, to insist nothing would go wrong, but he'd seen too much of war to make false promises. I promise, he said solemnly, but it won't come to that. We'll make it through this, all of us. Hana smiled, relief in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Then after a pause, tell me about your home again, the farm in Pennsylvania. So Sam told her, painting pictures with words as the rain drummed steadily on the roof. He described the red barn with its lightning rod, the creek that ran clear in spring, the way his mother's flower garden bloomed in summer. Hana listened, eyes closed, a small smile on her lips as she imagined a peaceful place far from war. That night, under cover of darkness and rain, Madame Lefebvre returned with a change of clothes for Hana, a simple peasant dress and shawl that would help her blend in with local women. And for you, she told Sam, handing him a worn jacket and cap, my late husband's clothes, better than an American uniform if we meet trouble. She led them to a small wagon waiting behind the barn, its bed filled with straw and covered with an old tarp. We must move quickly, Madame said. helping Hana into the back of the wagon. Stay hidden under the tarp. I'll drive slowly to avoid jostling you. Sam climbed in beside Hana, making sure she was comfortable. Madame covered them with the tarp, then climbed onto the driver's seat and clicked to the old horse. The wagon creaked into motion, rocking gently as it moved down the rutted lane. Sam kept one arm around Hana, steadying her against the bumps. Under the tarp, the air was close and damp. Hana's breathing quickened as a contraction came and went. Not much farther, Sam whispered, though he had no way of knowing. You're doing fine. They traveled for what seemed hours, the wagon occasionally stopping as Madame exchanged words with passers-by. Once, the wagon halted for a long time. Tense voices spoke in German and French. Sam gripped his pistol, ready to fight if they were discovered. Then came Madame's voice, cheerful and innocent. Fresh bread, officer. My own baking. For your men, perhaps? A gruff laugh, a few more words, and then the wagon lurched forward again. Sam released his breath slowly. Madame had somehow talked their way past a checkpoint. The journey continued, the wagon now moving faster on a smoother road. Hana dozed against Sam's shoulder, waking only when contractions disturbed her sleep. Finally, the wagon slowed and came to a stop. The tarp was pulled back, revealing a starry sky and the silhouette of a church steeple against the night. We're here, Madame whispered. Father Joseph is waiting. The village slept around them, windows dark and streets empty. Sam helped Hana down from the wagon, supporting her weight as they made their way to a small door at the side of the church. Before they could knock, the door opened. A tall, thin man with a priest's collar and kind eyes beckoned them inside. Quickly, he said in accented English. Come, come. Father Joseph led them through the silent church to a heavy wooden door behind the altar. A stone staircase descended into darkness. The crypt, he explained, lighting a lantern. Many have found shelter here. It is safe. The crypt was cool and dry, with stone walls and a low ceiling. Old cots lined one wall, and wooden crates served as tables and chairs. Candles in iron holders provided dim light. Rest now, Father Joseph said, helping Hana onto a cot. I will bring water and supplies. While the priest was gone, Madame Lefebvre squeezed Hana's hand. I must return before dawn, she said apologetically. If I'm missed, it will raise questions. Go, Hana urged. You've done so much already. I'll come tomorrow with food and news, Madame promised. She kissed Hana's forehead, patted Sam's shoulder, and hurried back up the stairs. When Father Joseph returned, he carried a basin of water, clean cloths, and a worn Bible. He checked Hana's condition with professional calm. The child comes soon, he confirmed. Perhaps tomorrow or the next day. You were wise to seek help. He opened his Bible and began to read in a low, soothing voice. Psalm 91. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. The ancient words filled the crypt, bringing a sense of peace even in their desperate circumstances. Sam, who hadn't set foot in a church since Grace's funeral, found himself mouthing the familiar verses alongside the priest. Hana listened, her hand resting on her belly. Though she didn't know the psalm, its message of protection resonated deep within her. Outside, the church bells tolled softly, marking the late hour. Father Joseph paused in his reading, a frown crossing his face. The bells, he whispered. They should not ring at this hour. Sam understood immediately. A signal? Father Joseph nodded grimly. Danger approaches. We must be very quiet now. The night passed in tense silence. Twice they heard footsteps in the church above, but no one discovered the entrance to the crypt. Father Joseph explained in whispers that the Germans rarely searched the church thoroughly out of respect, or perhaps superstition. By morning, Hana's contractions were coming regularly, though still spaced far apart. Father Joseph, who had helped deliver many village babies, assured them that labor often took many hours, especially for a first child. The body knows what to do, he said kindly. Trust it. Sam, drawing on his basic medic training, boiled water on a small spirit stove and prepared clean cloths. He felt helpless yet determined, wishing he knew more about delivering babies. Tell me what to do, he said to Father Joseph. How can I help her? The priest showed him how to time contractions, how to help Hana breathe through the pain, how to massage her lower back to ease her discomfort. Most important, Father Joseph said, is to keep her calm and give her strength. Your presence means much. Throughout the day, Hana labored bravely, gripping Sam's hand during contractions, resting between them. Father Joseph came and went, dividing his time between his parish duties above and the secret vigil below. Madame Lefebvre returned at dusk with food and worrying news. The Germans were conducting house-to-house searches, looking for a missing American soldier and a Japanese woman. They've offered a reward, she said, her voice tight with concern. Some in the village are tempted to talk. We should leave, Sam said immediately. Find somewhere else. No, Father Joseph interrupted firmly. The baby comes too soon now. Moving would be dangerous for mother and child. He turned to Madame Lefebvre. Go home. If questioned, you know nothing. We will manage here. After she left, Father Joseph spread a clean sheet on one of the cots. It is time to prepare, he told Hana. The child will not wait much longer. As if confirming his words, Hana gasped as a powerful contraction seized her. When it passed, she looked at Sam with frightened eyes. I'm scared, she admitted. I always thought my mother would be with me for this. Sam took her hand. She is, he said gently, in your heart. And I'm here. I won't leave you. Father Joseph began to pray softly, lighting more candles around the crypt. The wavering flames cast long shadows on the ancient walls, shadows that seemed to dance and move with each of Hana's breaths. Courage, the priest murmured. God is with us, even here, especially here. Through the long night, Hana labored. Sam stayed beside her, wiping her brow with cool cloths, holding her hands through contractions, murmuring words of encouragement. Father Joseph guided them both, his calm presence a comfort in the dimly lit crypt. Hana drifted in and out of awareness, lost in the ancient rhythm of birth. In her pain, she called for Kenji, for her mother, for ancestors long gone. She prayed in Japanese, words Sam couldn't understand but felt in his heart. You're doing so well, he told her as dawn approached. So strong. Almost there now. Father Joseph nodded encouragement. The baby comes soon. I can see the head. With a final, tremendous effort, Hana pushed. A moment of searing pain, a rush of relief, and then the thin, indignant cry of a newborn. A girl, Father Joseph announced, his voice thick with emotion. A beautiful girl. He placed the tiny, wailing infant on Hana's chest. Sam, tears streaming down his face, cut the cord as Father Joseph instructed him. Together, they wrapped the baby in a clean cloth. Hana gazed at her daughter in wonder. Hello, little one, she whispered. We've waited so long for you. Sam couldn't look away from the miracle before him. The baby was perfect. Tiny fingers, a tuft of dark hair, eyes squinting against the candlelight. She's beautiful, he said, his voice breaking, just like her mother. Hana smiled up at him, exhaustion and joy mingling on her face. Grace, she said softly. Her name is Grace. Sam felt his heart swell. Grace, he repeated. After my wife? Hana nodded. For the grace that brought us here. For the woman you loved. For this new life in a time of death. Father Joseph blessed the child with holy water from a small silver flask. Welcome, Grace, he said. Born in darkness, but destined for light. For a precious few hours, they rested in the peaceful crypt, marveling at the tiny life that had joined them. Father Joseph brought bread and honey, a small celebration for baby Grace's birth. Sam cradled the newborn while Hana slept, overcome with a fierce protectiveness he'd never felt before. This child, this innocent, would not know war if he could help it. Somehow he would get Hana and Grace to safety, to America, to a new beginning. I promise you, he whispered to the sleeping infant, you'll have a good life, a peaceful life. Father Joseph watched them, a gentle smile on his lined face. She has brought hope to this dark place, he observed. A reminder of why we fight. Not for land or power, but for the future, for children like Grace. The peaceful moment shattered as boots thundered on the church floor above. Angry voices shouted in German. A village woman screamed. Father Joseph's face went pale. They've come, he said. Someone has betrayed us. The soldier's footsteps echoed through the church. Glass shattered as something crashed to the floor above. Father Joseph moved quickly to the stone stairs, his intention clear. He would delay them, try to protect those hiding below. Stay here, he whispered. Pray. Before he could reach the stairs, the heavy door at the top swung open. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness. German voices barked commands. Father Joseph straightened his shoulders and climbed to meet them, his Bible clutched to his chest. This is a house of God, they heard him say. Show respect. A gruff voice answered in broken French. We search everywhere. Orders? Search then, Father Joseph replied calmly. But know that you answer to a higher authority than your commanders. Heavy boots descended the stone steps. 4 German soldiers appeared, rifles ready, followed by a stern-faced officer. They swept the crypt with their lights, freezing when they discovered Sam, Hana, and the newborn. Halt! The officer barked. American! Hands up! Sam stood slowly, placing himself between the soldiers and Hana. She just had a baby, he said clearly. They need medical attention. The officer's eyes narrowed. Japanese woman? You are the deserter and the prisoner we seek? Not prisoners, Sam said firmly. A family. Under my protection. The officer sneered. Protection? You have no authority here. He turned to his men. Arrest them all. The priest, too. Father Joseph stepped forward. These people have done nothing wrong. The woman needed help. Would you deny that to a mother and child? Silence, the officer snapped. Aiding enemies of the Reich is a serious offense. You will all face consequences. But as the soldiers moved to seize them, a young German private hesitated, his eyes fixed on baby Grace. Sir, he said in German, the child, it's just a baby. The officer rounded on him. Your orders, Private Weber. The young man swallowed hard. I have a wife, he said quietly, and a baby girl at home, in Munich. Father Joseph saw the opening and pressed it gently. We are all fathers, brothers, sons, he said. This child knows nothing of war or enemies. She is innocent, as all children are. For a moment, the young private's humanity showed through his uniform, but discipline reasserted itself as the officer barked another command. Enough! Take them all! The American to the military prison. The woman and child to the detention camp. The priest will answer to the commandant. Sam tensed, ready to fight despite the hopeless odds. You'll have to kill me first, he said, his voice deadly quiet. The officer raised his pistol. That can be arranged. Father Joseph moved between them, arms spread wide. No more death, he pleaded. Not in God's house. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then the officer gestured sharply to his men. Take them, now. Rough hands seized Sam. He struggled fiercely until a rifle butt struck his head, sending him to his knees. Through blurring vision, he saw soldiers pulling Hana to her feet, Grace wailing in her arms. Sam! Hana cried out, reaching for him as they were dragged apart. I'll find you, Sam called back. I promised! I'll find you! They were marched up the stone steps and through the church, now damaged from the soldiers' search. Outside, villagers had gathered, watching in silent horror as the prisoners were led to a waiting truck. Sam, his head throbbing, was thrown roughly into the back of the vehicle. Hana followed, clutching Grace tightly to her chest. Father Joseph was the last to board, his face solemn but unafraid. As the truck's engine roared to life, Sam looked out at the villagers' faces. Some turned away in shame or fear. Others watched with helpless anger. Among them stood Madame Lefebvre, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. The truck lurched forward, heading toward the town square. Sam inched closer to Hana, whispering urgently, Whatever happens, stay strong. For Grace. Hana nodded, her eyes fierce despite her exhaustion. We will not give up, she whispered back. Never. The truck rolled into the square, where more German soldiers waited. As it came to a stop, Sam prepared for the worst. Separation, imprisonment, perhaps even execution. But as the tailgate dropped, something unexpected happened. The village women began to gather, forming a line across the square. Children joined them, then old men. They stood shoulder to shoulder, blocking the path of the German convoy. And then, in the tense silence, they began to sing, a hymn of peace, of hope, of resistance. Their voices rose in harmony, filling the square with sound. The German officer shouted orders, but his men hesitated. The singing grew louder. More villagers joined the line, arms linked in solidarity. In that moment, as the sunrise painted the sky with gold and the voices of the village rose in defiance, something changed in the hard eyes of the officer. Perhaps he remembered his own home, his own family. Perhaps he simply calculated the cost of forcing his way through unarmed civilians. Whatever the reason, his command to proceed died on his lips. And in that moment of hesitation, the distant boom of artillery broke the morning stillness. The front was moving. Allied forces were advancing. The officer barked new orders. His men scrambled back to their vehicles. The prisoners were forgotten in the sudden urgency of retreat. They're leaving, Father Joseph said in disbelief. God has granted us a miracle. As the German convoy pulled out of the square, abandoning their mission in the face of approaching Allied forces, Sam helped Hana and Grace down from the truck. The villagers surrounded them, offering support, shelter, safety. Madame Lefebvre pushed through the crowd, embracing them with tears of joy. Come, she said, leading them away from the square. You are safe now. You are home. And so, as the Germans fled and the village celebrated, Sam, Hana, and baby Grace found themselves embraced by a community that had chosen courage over fear, humanity over hatred. It wasn't the end of their journey. Far from it. But it was a moment of grace in a world torn by war. A moment that promised better days to come. The village schoolhouse became a sanctuary for Sam, Hana, and baby Grace. Madame Lefebvre and the village women had transformed the single room with curtained windows into a temporary home. A cot for Hana, a makeshift cradle for Grace, and a bedroll for Sam. The Germans won't be back soon, Father Joseph assured them over a simple dinner of potato soup and dark bread. The Allied advance has them retreating east. We may see American troops within days. Sam's heart lifted at the news. Then we might find help getting Hana and Grace to safety. Hana sat near the window. Grace nestled against her chest. The newborn slept peacefully. Tiny fingers curled around a fold of her mother's shawl. In the golden evening light, they looked like a painting of the Madonna and Child, serene despite all they'd endured. She eats well, Madame Lefebvre observed, watching the baby with a grandmother's knowing eye. A strong spirit, this one. Like her mother, Sam said, his voice warm with admiration. Hana smiled shyly, still unused to compliments. In the week since Grace's birth, she had regained her strength remarkably. The village women had taken turns bringing meals, washing linens, and offering quiet wisdom about caring for a newborn. Tomorrow I will take you both to Dr. Benoit, Madame Lefebvre said. A check of health for mother and child. Is it safe? Sam asked, concerned about venturing into the village proper. Father Joseph nodded. The doctor can be trusted, and you'll need papers, birth certificate for the child at least. He can help with that. That night, as Hana slept with Grace beside her, Sam sat by the door, keeping watch as he'd done every night since their rescue. Though the immediate danger had passed, the habit of vigilance was hard to break. Every distant engine sound, every creak of the old building set him on edge. You should rest, Madame Lefebvre said softly, appearing beside him with a cup of herbal tea. She often stayed late, reluctant to leave the little family alone. I will, Sam promised, accepting the steaming mug. Soon. The elderly woman studied his face in the lamplight. You care for them very much. It wasn't a question, but Sam answered anyway. Yes, the simple word contained depths he wasn't ready to fully explore. And after the war? Madame asked. What then? Sam stared into his tea, seeing possibilities he hadn't dared consider before. I made a promise to help Hana find her husband's family in America. I aim to keep it. And then? Sam shook his head. One step at a time. That's all any of us can count on these days. Madame Lefebvre patted his hand. The heart knows its path, even when the mind cannot see the road ahead. She left him with those words to ponder through the quiet night watches. Sam thought of Grace, his late wife, and the dreams they'd shared. Then of Hana and baby Grace, and the strange new feelings growing in his heart. Was it possible to love again after such loss? To build something new from the ashes of war? As dawn broke, he had no answers. Only a deepening resolve to protect the sleeping mother and child for as long as they needed him. Dr. Benoit's office occupied the ground floor of his stone house near the village square. The doctor himself was a round, balding man with kind eyes and a gentle touch. He examined Grace first, pronouncing her parfait, perfect, with obvious delight. A healthy girl, he declared, handing the infant back to Hana. Good lungs, good color. You have done well, madame. His examination of Hana was equally reassuring. You heal quickly, he told her. But no heavy work for another week, yes? While Hana dressed, Dr. Benoit beckoned Sam and Madame Lefebvre into his study. He closed the door and lowered his voice. There is news, he said, glancing at a newspaper on his desk. The Americans have liberated towns just 30 kilometers from here. They will arrive within days. Sam felt a surge of hope. That's good news. Yes and no, the doctor cautioned. Good for the village, perhaps not for your Japanese friend. He tapped the newspaper. There is much anger about Pearl Harbor. Many Americans view all Japanese as enemies. The thought had occurred to Sam too. Even if American forces arrived, would they help a Japanese woman and her half-American baby? Or would they see only an enemy? We need papers for the child, Madame Lefebvre said. Proof that her father was American. Dr. Benoit nodded thoughtfully. I can provide a birth certificate, but more would be better. Letters, marriage documents, anything to establish the child's American parentage. Sam thought of the photograph Hana carried, her only tangible link to Kenji. We don't have much, he admitted. Then we must create what we need, the doctor said simply. He pulled out a blank form and began to fill it out. Grace Sakamoto, born April 12, 1945. Father Kenji Sakamoto, American citizen of Japanese descent. Mother Hana Sakamoto. He paused, pen hovering over the document. Witnesses? Samuel Taylor, U.S. Army. Sam said firmly. And Father Joseph Mercier. The doctor nodded and continued writing. When he finished, he sprinkled sand over the ink to dry it, then carefully folded the paper. Keep this safe, he told Sam. It may be your child's ticket to America. Your child. The phrase lingered in Sam's mind as they walked back to the schoolhouse, Hana carrying Grace while Madame led the way through back alleys to avoid curious eyes. That night, after Madame left and Hana was asleep, Sam unfolded the birth certificate and studied it in the lamplight. Grace Sakamoto, a child of two worlds, just as Kenji had wanted. A child who deserved a future free from war and hatred. I'll get you there, he whispered to the sleeping infant. Both of you. Somehow. 3 days later, the distant rumble of engines woke the village before dawn. This time the sound didn't bring fear but tentative hope. American tanks and trucks rolled down the main road, dust billowing behind them. Sam, watching from the schoolhouse window, felt his throat tighten at the sight of the American flag. Home. It represented home. They're here, he told Hana, who was changing Grace's cloth diaper. Our guys. Hana's expression mixed hope with apprehension. What will we do? Sam squared his shoulders. I'm going to talk to them. Find out who's in charge. He borrowed civilian clothes from Father Joseph. The priest's Sunday trousers and shirt were a poor fit for Sam's taller frame, but better than his filthy, torn uniform. Before leaving, he knelt beside Hana and Grace. Stay here, he said. I'll come back as soon as I can. Hana nodded, trust in her dark eyes. We'll be waiting. The village square buzzed with activity. Soldiers setting up communications equipment, villagers bringing offerings of wine and flowers, children gaping at the military vehicles. Sam approached cautiously, searching for officer insignia. A captain stood near a command jeep, consulting a map with his driver. Sam took a deep breath and walked up, standing at attention from habit. Sir, he began. Private Samuel Taylor, 101st Infantry. I need to speak with you about a civilian matter. The captain looked up, surprise crossing his features. Taylor? You're on the missing list, soldier. Where's your uniform? Sam explained briefly. The convoy, finding Hana, the birth of Grace, the German patrol, the village's help. He left out details that might complicate matters, but emphasized one critical point. Her husband was an American citizen, sir. Their baby is an American citizen, too. I promised to help them reach his family in California. The captain listened with growing skepticism. That's quite a story, Private. You abandoned your unit to help an enemy national? Not an enemy, sir. A woman who needed help. Her husband was American. Japanese-American, the captain corrected. You know what's happening with them back home? Internment camps. Security measures. He shook his head. Look, Taylor, I'm sympathetic, but this isn't my call. Report to Lieutenant Hayes for reassignment. We'll handle the civilian situation according to protocol. Sam felt his hopes sinking. Protocol likely meant a detention camp for Hana and Grace. Separation, hardship, perhaps even deportation. Sir, with respect, I gave my word. These people saved our lives. The woman, the priest, the village. They risked everything to hide us from Germans. The captain's expression softened slightly. I understand, Private, but there are channels for these things. Rules. Sometimes doing right matters more than rules, Sam said quietly. For a long moment, the captain studied him. Then he sighed. Report to Hayes. I'll send someone to interview the woman and verify her story. That's all I can do for now. It wasn't the answer Sam had hoped for, but it was something. He saluted and turned to go. Taylor, the captain called after him. You're a good man. Misguided maybe, but good. Sam walked back to the schoolhouse, his mind racing with plans and contingencies. When he arrived, he found Father Joseph sitting with Hana, their heads bent over a letter the priest was writing. A testimonial, Father Joseph explained, about how the child was born, the circumstances, everything I witnessed. Sam nodded gratefully. We'll need it. The captain's sending someone to interview Hana. Father Joseph's expression grew concerned. And then? I don't know, Sam admitted. But I'm not letting them separate us. Hana looked up at him, her face calm despite the uncertainty. What will you do? Report for duty, Sam said. Follow orders, for now. It'll look better if I'm cooperative. He knelt beside her. But I made you a promise, remember? I'm not breaking it. He gently touched baby Grace's cheek. The infant gurgled and caught his finger in her tiny fist. The simple gesture strengthened his resolve. Trust me, he told Hana. Whatever happens, we face it together. Lieutenant Hayes was a harried young officer with too much paperwork and too little sleep. He barely looked up when Sam reported. Taylor? Yeah, you're on the list. Medical check first, then report to Sergeant Wilson for assignment. He scribbled a note. Welcome back to the war, Private. The medical examination was brief. Sam was healthier than most, despite his ordeal. The Army doctor noted his minor injuries, prescribed rest, and cleared him for light duty. By afternoon, Sam found himself assigned to headquarters company as a translator. His high school French was better than nothing in a unit short on linguists. The assignment was a stroke of luck. It kept him in the village and gave him access to information. He learned that the company would remain for at least a week, securing the area before moving east. He also discovered that a Lieutenant Brooks from Civil Affairs would be handling displaced persons and enemy nationals, including Hana and Grace. That evening, Sam returned to the schoolhouse to find a young lieutenant interviewing Hana. Father Joseph sat nearby, Grace sleeping in his arms. "Ah, Private Taylor," the lieutenant said. "I'm Brooks, Civil Affairs, just gathering information about your friends here." Sam could read nothing from the officer's neutral expression. "Yes, sir. I'd be happy to provide any details you need. I think I have what I need for now." Brooks closed his notebook and stood. "Mrs. Sakamoto has been very cooperative." "And your decision, sir?" Brooks hesitated. "That's not entirely up to me. There are procedures for enemy nationals." "Sir," Sam interrupted. "With respect, Mrs. Sakamoto is the widow of an American citizen. Her child is American. They deserve our protection, not detention." The lieutenant studied Sam thoughtfully. "You feel strongly about this?" "Yes, sir, I do. These people risked their lives to help an American soldier. The village stood up to armed Germans to protect us. That should count for something." Brooks nodded slowly. "It does, Private. It does." He glanced at his watch. "I'll submit my report tonight. Until then, nothing changes. Mrs. Sakamoto and the child remain here under village care." After the lieutenant left, Sam exhaled deeply. "What did he ask you?" "Many questions," Hana said. "About Kenji, our marriage, how I came to France." He was polite but careful. Father Joseph handed the sleeping Grace back to her mother. "I showed him the birth certificate and my letter. He seemed impressed by the village's actions." "Now we wait," Sam said, though waiting was the last thing he wanted to do. Every instinct told him to take Hana and Grace and run. But where? How far would they get? A deserter and a Japanese woman with a newborn? No, they needed official help to reach America, which meant convincing Lieutenant Brooks and his superiors that Hana and Grace belonged under American protection. That night, while Hana slept, Sam wrote his own letter, his formal statement about everything that had happened since he found Hana on that muddy road. He wrote of her courage, her kindness, her devotion to her child. He described the village's bravery in defying German soldiers, and he made a personal plea. Let him escort Hana and Grace to America to fulfill his promise to a fellow American's widow. He sealed the letter and took it to headquarters at first light, asking that it be added to Lieutenant Brooks's report. Then he reported for duty, translating documents and interpreting for villagers coming to the Americans with questions or concerns. All day he waited for news. None came. A second day passed, then a third. Sam divided his time between army duties and visiting Hana and Grace. The baby was thriving, growing stronger daily. Hana, too, seemed to blossom now that immediate danger had passed. She helped Madame Lefebvre with cooking and mending, eager to repay the village's kindness. On the fourth day, Lieutenant Brooks found Sam at his desk in headquarters. "Taylor," he said. "A word." Sam followed him outside, heart pounding. Was this the decision they'd been waiting for? Brooks lit a cigarette and offered one to Sam, who declined. "Got a telegraph from division about your Japanese friends," the lieutenant said, exhaling smoke. "And?" Sam could barely keep his voice steady. "It's complicated. Officially, enemy nationals should be placed in detention pending investigation. That's the protocol." Sam's hopes plummeted. "Sir," Brooks held up a hand. "Let me finish. Given the special circumstances, American father, birth on Allied territory, assistance to American personnel, they're willing to consider an exception." "What kind of exception?" "Transit papers to England first. From there, verification of the husband's American citizenship, then possible clearance for entry to the United States." Brooks took another drag on his cigarette. "It's not a guarantee, but it's a start." Sam felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "Thank you, sir. When would they leave?" "That's the other part," Brooks said, studying Sam carefully. "They need an escort, someone responsible for them during transit. I suggested you." "Me?" Sam couldn't hide his surprise. "You found them? You've looked after them? You know their situation? Makes sense." Brooks flicked ash from his cigarette. "Plus, your tour of duty ends in 6 weeks. Division's willing to process your papers early. Compassionate grounds." Sam's mind raced. Escort Hana and Grace to England, possibly to America. End his military service early? It seemed too good to be true. What's the catch, sir? Brooks smiled slightly. Smart man. The catch is that you're personally responsible for them. If anything goes wrong, if they disappear, cause problems, whatever, it's on you. Could mean a court-martial. Sam didn't hesitate. I accept. Thought you might. Brooks handed him a folder. Paperwork. Get it done by tomorrow. Transport leaves for the coast in 3 days. Sam stared at the folder, hardly believing what had just happened. Why, sir? Why help us like this? The lieutenant's expression softened. My wife's Japanese-American. Her family's in an internment camp in California while I'm fighting for democracy in Europe. The irony's not lost on me. He straightened his shoulders. Get those papers filled out, Private. Sam barely felt the ground beneath his feet as he ran to the schoolhouse. He burst through the door, startling Hana, who was folding freshly washed baby clothes. We're going to America, he announced breathlessly. All of us. Together. Hana's eyes widened. Truly? Sam explained everything. The transit papers, his early discharge, his role as their escort. It's not a direct route, he cautioned. England first, then paperwork, then hopefully America. But we'll be together. Tears filled Hana's eyes. She gently laid baby Grace in her cradle and stood, moving to take Sam's hands in hers. You have done so much, she said softly. More than I could ever repay. No repayment needed, Sam replied. I made a promise. Hana's gaze held his. Is that the only reason? Duty? The question hung between them, opening a door neither had dared approach. Sam felt his heart racing, not from his run, but from something deeper, something that had been growing since that first day on the muddy road. No, he admitted, not just duty. Hana stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. What then? Sam struggled to find words for the feelings swirling inside him. Grief for his lost wife mixed with unexpected joy, guilt tangled with hope, fear of the future balanced by the certainty that being with Hana and Grace felt right, felt like coming home after a long journey. I care about you, he said finally. Both of you. More than I thought possible. I know it's fast. I know it's complicated, but Hana stopped his words by gently placing her fingers against his lips. Not fast, she corrected. Life and death together. That is not fast. That is deep time. Sam nodded, understanding. They had compressed a lifetime of experiences into weeks. Fear, hope, birth, survival. Their bond had been forged in fire. I want to help you find Kenji's family, he said. They should know their son's child. But after that, if you wanted, we could... Hana's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. Yes, she said simply. After that, we will find our way. Together. The moment was broken by Grace's hungry cry. Hana turned to tend to her daughter, but not before Sam caught the blush on her cheeks, the hope in her eyes. That night, he wrote in his journal, Today I learned that the heart can hold both grief and joy, that love doesn't diminish what came before but builds upon it. Grace would understand. I think she'd be happy. The village gathered to say goodbye on a bright spring morning. The American convoy was heading to the coast, and Sam, Hana, and Grace would travel with them as far as Cherbourg, where a ship waited to take them to England. Madame Lefebvre fought tears as she placed a small package in Hana's hands. Open it later, she said. A small token to remember us by. Father Joseph blessed the little family, his weathered hands gentle on Grace's dark head. God brought you to us in your hour of need, he told them. Now he sends you forth to a new life. Go with his blessing and our love. The villagers had prepared a small feast, precious food shared in celebration of new beginnings. They ate together in the schoolhouse yard, children playing around them, spring flowers nodding in the breeze. For a few hours, the war seemed very far away. As they boarded the army truck that would take them to the coast, Sam looked back at the village that had sheltered them, at the people who had risked everything to help strangers in need. We'll come back someday, he promised, when the war is over, to show Grace where she was born. Madame Lefebvre nodded, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. We will be waiting, she said. Our family across the sea. The truck engine roared to life. Sam sat beside Hana, who held Grace wrapped in a soft blanket Madame had knitted. As they pulled away, the villagers sang, the same hymn they had sung in the square, facing down German guns with nothing but faith and courage. The melody followed them down the road, a blessing and a farewell. Hana hummed along softly, teaching the tune to her daughter, preserving this memory for a child too young to understand all that had happened here. What was in Madame's package? Sam asked when the village was out of sight. Hana carefully unwrapped the small bundle. Inside was an antique silver locket on a delicate chain. When opened, it revealed a tiny compartment, empty, waiting to be filled. For memories, Hana said, understanding the gift's meaning. To keep precious things close to the heart, Sam smiled. Our first family heirloom. The word family hung in the air between them, a hope, a promise, a future waiting to unfold. The journey to Cherbourg took 2 days, the convoy moving slowly through a countryside still scarred by war. Sam, now officially assigned as Hana and Grace's escort, kept them close. They slept in abandoned houses or makeshift camps, always together. At the port, chaos reigned. Thousands of soldiers, refugees, and displaced persons crowded the docks, all seeking passage to England or beyond. Sam used his military status to secure priority boarding for Hana and Grace, citing the infant's needs. The ship was a converted cargo vessel, its hold fitted with rows of narrow bunks. Hana and Grace were assigned to the women's section, Sam to the men's quarters on a different deck. The separation, though necessary, left Sam restless. "I'll check on you whenever I can," he promised as a weary-looking nurse led Hana to her assigned bunk. "We'll be in England soon." The crossing was rough, spring storms churning the channel into white-capped fury. Many passengers fell ill, including Hana. Sam found her pale and exhausted, trying to care for Grace while fighting seasickness. "Let me," he said, taking the fussing baby. "Rest while you can." He paced the crowded deck with Grace, telling her stories about Pennsylvania, about the farm where he grew up, about the life that might await them in America. The baby watched him with solemn dark eyes, so like her mother's, occasionally reaching up to touch his face with tiny fingers. "You're good with her," observed an army nurse, passing by with medical supplies. Sam smiled down at Grace. "She makes it easy." After 3 storm-tossed days, they reached Portsmouth. The massive English port teemed with military activity. Ships arriving and departing, troops drilling on the docks, supply convoys rumbling through narrow streets. Sam helped Hana and Grace through processing, presenting their special papers to harried officials. Thanks to Lieutenant Brooks's arrangements, they were assigned to a small boarding house, rather than the crowded refugee center. Their room was tiny but clean, with a sagging double bed, a washstand, and a crib borrowed from the landlady's grown children. For the first time since the farmhouse, they had privacy, a door that closed, a space of their own. "How long will we stay here?" Hana asked, settling Grace in the crib. Sam shook his head. "Hard to say. Depends on the paperwork, ship availability. Could be weeks." Hana nodded, accepting this as she had accepted every challenge. "Then we make this our home for now." In the days that followed, they established a routine. Sam reported daily to the American Liaison Office, checking on their paperwork and seeking news of transport to America. Hana cared for Grace and helped their landlady, Mrs. Pearson, with cooking and cleaning. The Englishwoman was initially wary of Hana, but baby Grace proved an irresistible bridge. Soon, Mrs. Pearson was offering childcare advice, sharing ration tea, and teaching Hana to make Yorkshire pudding. "Strange times," she remarked to Sam one evening. "My Harry's fighting Japs in the Pacific, and here I am taking tea with a Japanese girl. War makes no sense at all." "People make sense, though," Sam replied. "Once you see past the flags and uniforms." Mrs. Pearson patted his hand. "You're a good lad. Your young lady is lucky to have found you." Your young lady. The phrase warmed Sam, even as he clarified their situation. She was married to someone else, an American. I'm just helping them get to his family." Mrs. Pearson raised knowing eyebrows. "If you say so, dear." The truth was more complicated than Sam could explain, to Mrs. Pearson or to himself. His feelings for Hana grew stronger each day, but he held back, mindful of her grief, her adjustment to motherhood, the uncertainty of their future. They shared a deep bond, but had spoken only once of what might come after reaching America. Then came news that changed everything. "War's over in Europe," shouted a newsboy, racing down the street. "Germany surrenders, it's over." The date was May 8th, 1945, VE Day. Portsmouth erupted in celebration. Bells rang, flags waved, strangers embraced in the streets. Sam found Hana at the boarding house, Grace in her arms. "It's over," he told her, face flushed with excitement. "The European war is finished. Germany surrendered." Hana's eyes filled with tears. So much death to reach this day. Sam nodded, understanding her mixed emotions. Victory brought joy but couldn't erase all they had lost. That night, the boarding house residents gathered for a celebration dinner. Precious rations pooled for a feast of sorts. Mrs. Pearson broke out a hidden bottle of sherry, pouring tiny glasses for everyone. "To peace," she declared, "and to those who didn't live to see it." They drank the toast solemnly, each remembering their own lost loved ones. Then Mrs. Pearson turned to Hana and Sam. "And to new beginnings," she added with a smile. "And to little Grace, born in war, but destined for peace." Later, when Grace was asleep and the house had quieted, Sam and Hana sat by their room's small window, watching celebratory bonfires flicker across the city. "What happens now?" Hana asked softly. Sam took her hand. "We keep going. Find Kenji's family. Build a life for Grace." He hesitated, then added, "Together, if that's what you want." Hana's fingers tightened around his. "Is that what you want, Sam?" The question deserved an honest answer. Sam thought of Grace, his late wife, of their dreams, their love, their too brief happiness. Then he looked at Hana, at the strength and gentleness that had captivated him from the first. "Yes," he said simply. "I want us to be a family. I know it's soon. I know there's Kenji's memory to honor, but—" Hana stopped him with a gentle finger to his lips, just as she had done in the schoolhouse. "Kenji would want his child to have a father who loves her," she said, "and his wife to have a husband who cherishes her." The word husband hung between them, a possibility, a promise, a future suddenly within reach. "Are you asking me to marry you, Hana Sakamoto?" Sam's voice was gentle, teasing but serious too. Hana smiled, her eyes bright in the dim light. In Japan, long ago, women could not ask such things, but this is a new world now. She leaned closer. "Yes, Sam Taylor, I am asking." Sam's answer was a kiss, gentle at first, then deepening as Hana responded. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "Yes," Sam whispered against her hair. 1,000 times yes. Outside, fireworks burst over the harbor, celebrating the end of one chapter in history. Inside the small room, Sam and Hana held each other close, looking toward the beginning of another. The letter arrived on a rainy June morning, nearly a month after VE Day. Sam recognized the official army insignia on the envelope and tore it open with trembling fingers. "What is it?" Hana asked, looking up from where she sat playing with Grace on a blanket. Sam's eyes scanned the typewritten words, his expression shifting from tension to relief. "Our papers," he said finally. "We've been cleared to sail for New York. Next week." Hana's hand flew to her mouth. "Truly? America?" Sam knelt beside her, showing her the document. "All 3 of us." They verified Kenji's citizenship. Grace is officially recognized as an American citizen by birth. Baby Grace, now 2 months old, gurgled and kicked her legs as if celebrating the news. She had grown plump and strong, with bright, curious eyes that seemed to take in everything. "There's more," Sam continued, his voice softening. "My discharge has been processed. I'll be a civilian by the time we reach New York." Hana looked into his eyes, understanding the mixture of relief and uncertainty this brought. "What will you do? After?" Sam had been thinking about this question for weeks. "My family's farm is still there," he said. "My brother's been running it while I've been away. It's not much, but it's good land, a good place to raise a family." The word hung in the air between them, full of promise. Since their kiss on VE Day, they had spoken often of the future, of building a life together. But the war had taught them caution. Each step needed to be taken with care. "First," Sam said, taking Hana's hand, "we find Kenji's family in Fresno. They deserve to know about Grace, to be part of her life if they wish." Hana nodded gratefully. Sam's respect for Kenji's memory, his determination that Grace should know her father's heritage, these were among the many reasons she had grown to love him. "And then?" she asked softly. Sam's thumb traced gentle circles on her palm. "And then, if you're still sure, we get married. Make it official." The joy in Hana's eyes was answer enough, but she spoke the words anyway. "I am sure, Sam Taylor. More sure than I have ever been." Mrs. Pearson found them like that, heads bent close together, Grace cooing between them, a family in all but name. The landlady beamed at the news of their departure. "You must have a proper send-off," she declared. "A little celebration before you go." Despite rationing, Mrs. Pearson managed to arrange a farewell dinner with the other boarders. She even produced a small cake, saved from precious sugar rations. Their fellow residents, a retired schoolteacher, a dock worker, and an elderly couple who had lost their home in the Blitz, gathered to wish them well. "To America," toasted the schoolteacher, raising her teacup. "May you find peace there." "And to your future," added Mrs. Pearson with a knowing smile. "Some good should come from all this suffering." The evening ended with Mrs. Pearson pressing a small package into Hana's hands. "For the little one," she said. "My own children loved these." Inside was a pair of tiny hand-knitted booties and a well-worn copy of Peter Rabbit. Hana's eyes filled with tears at the kindness. "We'll read it to her every night," she promised, "and tell her about the good people of England who helped us on our journey." The ship that would take them to America was the SS Harmony, a converted luxury liner now serving as a troop transport and refugee carrier. Compared to their channel crossing, it was practically palatial. Clean bunks, regular meals, even a small nursery where mothers could gather with their children. Their quarters were still separated by gender, but Sam found Hana and Grace each day in the nursery or on deck when weather permitted. As the English coastline faded behind them, they stood at the rail, watching the horizon that hid their destination. "Nervous?" Sam asked, noticing Hana's pensive expression. "A little," she admitted. "America has been a dream for so long. Now it becomes real." She glanced down at Grace, sleeping against her shoulder. "And Kenji's family, what will they think of me? Of us?" Sam understood her concern. The Sakamotos might welcome their American-born granddaughter, while resenting the white soldier who now stood in their son's place. Or worse, they might reject both mother and child, their grief still too raw to embrace this unexpected connection. "We'll face it together," he promised, "whatever happens." The Atlantic crossing took 10 days. Grace proved to be a good sailor, fascinated by the endless water, the ship's vibrations, the changing sky. Hana spent hours walking the deck with her, pointing out seabirds and distant ships, singing lullabies in both Japanese and English. Sam watched them sometimes from a distance, struck by Hana's grace, her gentle strength, her devotion to her child. She had endured so much, the loss of her husband, imprisonment, the dangers of wartime birth, yet remained unbroken, still capable of joy and love. "You're a lucky man," observed a passing officer, noting the direction of Sam's gaze. "Believe me, I know it," Sam replied. As they neared America, Hana grew quieter, spending more time alone with Grace. Sam respected her need for space, understanding she was preparing herself for meeting Kenji's family, for starting a new life in a strange land, for facing whatever reception awaited a Japanese woman in post-war America. The morning they sailed into New York Harbor was misty, the famous skyline appearing like a dream through swirling fog. Gradually, the mist cleared, revealing the Statue of Liberty standing tall and proud, her torch raised in welcome. Sam found Hana at the rail, Grace bundled against the morning chill. He stood beside them, his heart too full for words, as Lady Liberty came into full view. "She's beautiful," Hana whispered, just as Kenji described. "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free," Sam quoted softly. "That's what's written on her base." Hana's eyes shone with unshed tears. "Are we welcome here, truly?" Sam's arm encircled her shoulders. "Not everyone will welcome you," he said honestly. "There's still anger, prejudice, but we'll find our place, make our home." As the ship docked and passengers prepared to disembark, the reality of their arrival sank in. They were in America, 3 people bound by circumstance, choice, and love, ready to begin again. The processing at Ellis Island was exhausting but smoother than Sam had feared. His military status and the special papers Lieutenant Brooks had arranged eased their way. Hana's documents were examined closely, but Grace's American citizenship proved beyond question. "Purpose of entry?" asked a tired immigration official, barely looking up from his forms. "Family reunification," Sam answered, "and starting a new life." By late afternoon, they stood on American soil, their few possessions in 2 small bags, the bustling city before them. Sam felt a surge of emotions, relief at completing their journey, pride in keeping his promise, anxiety about what came next. "First step," he said, leading them toward the station. "Telegram to Kenji's family in Fresno. Let them know we're coming." The cross-country train journey gave them their first glimpse of America's vastness. Through New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, and finally California, they watched the landscape transform from crowded cities to rolling farmland to rugged mountains. For Hana, each mile brought new wonders and challenges. She marveled at the endless space, so different from Japan's crowded islands, but also felt the stares of fellow passengers, some curious, others openly hostile. "It will get easier," Sam assured her during a stop in Chicago, after a woman had moved seats rather than sit near them. "People are still raw from the war. They'll learn to see you, not just where you came from." Grace proved to be their best ambassador. The baby's sunny smiles and curious eyes often melted the coldest reception. A gruff conductor who had initially frowned at Hana later returned with an extra pillow, for the little American. As they traveled west, Sam pointed out landmarks and shared stories of his own cross-country journey to boot camp years earlier. When they passed near Pennsylvania, he showed Hana the rolling hills that resembled his hometown. "Someday I'll take you there," he promised. "Show you the farm, introduce you to my brother and his family." Hana smiled, touched by his certainty about their future. I'd like that, she said, to see where you grew up. Will it be like Kenji's family farm, do you think? She asked later, as they watched Midwestern wheat fields roll by. In Fresno? Sam shook his head. Different crops, different climate, but farm families share something special, no matter where they're from, a connection to the land, to growing things. The telegram they'd sent from New York had received a brief reply. Will meet train. Sakamoto family. Nothing more. No warmth, no rejection, just acknowledgement. They're cautious, Sam said when Hana showed concern. Can't blame them. We're strangers bringing news that will change their lives. The final leg of their journey took them into California's Central Valley, a patchwork of orchards and farms stretching toward distant mountains. Fresno appeared as a collection of low buildings shimmering in the summer heat. As the train hissed to a stop at Fresno Station, Hana clutched Grace close, her expression a mixture of hope and apprehension. Sam gathered their bags, his own heart racing. Ready? He asked softly. Hana nodded, squaring her shoulders. For Grace, she said, and for Kenji. The platform was crowded with families greeting returning soldiers, couples reuniting after wartime separation, travelers beginning summer vacations. Sam scanned the faces, looking for anyone who might resemble Kenji from the photograph Hana carried. Then he spotted them, an elderly Japanese-American couple standing slightly apart from the crowd. The man was tall for his age, with Kenji's strong features. The woman was tiny, gray-haired, her hands clasped tightly before her. There, Sam said, nodding toward them. I think that's them. He led Hana through the crowd, stopping a respectful distance from the couple. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Hana stepped forward, bowing slightly in the Japanese manner. Mr. and Mrs. Sakamoto, she said softly. I am Hana, Kenji's wife. The elderly woman's eyes filled with tears as they fixed on baby Grace. Kenji's child? She whispered. Hana nodded, gently turning Grace so her grandparents could see her face. The resemblance to Kenji was unmistakable. The same thoughtful eyes, the same curve of the mouth. Mr. Sakamoto stepped forward, his weathered hand reaching out tentatively to touch his granddaughter's cheek. Kenji never told us, he said, his voice rough with emotion. About a wife? A child? There wasn't time, Hana explained. The war came so quickly. He was visiting you when... She couldn't finish. Mrs. Sakamoto moved closer, her eyes never leaving Grace. May I? She asked, arms outstretched. Hana carefully transferred the baby to her grandmother's embrace. Mrs. Sakamoto cradled Grace with practiced ease, murmuring soft Japanese endearment. She has his eyes, the older woman said, tears streaming down her cheeks. My son's eyes, Mr. Sakamoto turned his attention to Sam, noting his civilian clothes but recognizing the military bearing. And you, young man? Your part in this? Sam explained briefly, finding Hana on the road in France, the birth in the church crypt, their journey to America. He omitted certain details, focusing on his promise to help Kenji's family reunite. You risked much, Mr. Sakamoto observed when Sam finished. For strangers, not strangers for long, Sam replied simply. Something in his tone, or perhaps the way his gaze returned to Hana, made Mrs. Sakamoto look up sharply. Her eyes moved between the two young people, perceiving the unspoken connection. You care for each other, she stated. Not a question, but a recognition. Hana looked at Sam, then back to Kenji's parents. Yes, she admitted. It happened slowly, then all at once. Sam saved us, protected us. But more than that, he respected Kenji's memory, insisted Grace know her father's family. She hesitated, then added softly, Kenji would understand, I think. A heavy silence followed. Sam held his breath, understanding how much rode on the elder Sakamoto's response. Would they see him as an interloper, someone taking advantage of their son's widow? Or could they accept the complicated reality of war, loss, and unexpected love? Mr. Sakamoto studied them both for a long moment. Then he nodded, a single decisive movement. Come, he said. Our home is small, but there is room for all. We have much to discuss. The Sakamoto farm sat on 20 acres outside Fresno, rows of grapevines, peach and almond orchards, a vegetable garden behind a modest house. A faded for sale sign leaned against the mailbox. You're selling? Sam asked as they bounced down the dusty driveway in the Sakamoto's old truck. We're selling, Mr. Sakamoto corrected. The internment camp took us away for 3 years. We returned to find everything neglected, damaged. Too much for old bones to restore alone. Sam understood the unspoken message. With no son to inherit, the elderly couple had seen no choice but to sell their life's work. But now, Mrs. Sakamoto said, smiling at Grace. Perhaps things change. The house was simple but spotlessly clean, its furnishings a blend of American practicality and Japanese aesthetics. In the living room, a household shrine held Kenji's photograph, an honor for a son believed lost without descendants. He will always have a place of honor, Mrs. Sakamoto assured Hana, seeing her gaze drawn to the shrine. And now his daughter will know him through our stories. That evening, over a simple meal of garden vegetables and rice, they shared their stories. Hana spoke of meeting Kenji in Japan. Their brief marriage before war separated them. The Sakamotos described their struggles during internment, their determination to reclaim their farm despite community hostility upon their return. Some neighbors helped, Mrs. Sakamoto said, kept the house from being vandalized. Others, she shook her head. War brings out both the best and worst in people. That's the truth, Sam agreed, thinking of the French village that had risked everything to help them. As the evening progressed, Sam noticed Mr. Sakamoto watching him intently. Finally, the older man spoke directly. Your intentions toward Hana and my granddaughter, they are honorable? Sam met his gaze steadily. Absolutely, sir. I've asked Hana to marry me, with her permission to make a home for her and Grace. He glanced at Hana, drawing strength from her presence. But we both want Grace to know her heritage, both sides, to know about Kenji and your family. Mr. Sakamoto nodded thoughtfully. And your family? Will they accept a Japanese daughter-in-law? A half-Japanese grandchild? It was a fair question, one Sam had asked himself many times. My brother knows about Hana and Grace from my letters, he said. He says any family of mine is family of his. Sam smiled slightly. My mother would have said the same if she were still alive. She judged people by their hearts, not their ancestry. And your farm in Pennsylvania? That is where you would live? Sam hesitated, glancing around the Sakamoto home. That was the plan, he admitted. But seeing this place, knowing what it meant to Kenji, he turned to Hana. We could stay here, help rebuild, if that's what you want. Hana's eyes widened at the suggestion. But your family farm? My brother's been running it for years, Sam said. He has 2 boys who'll take over someday. Here, Grace could know her grandparents, her father's legacy. Mr. Sakamoto raised a hand. Such decisions need not be made tonight. Rest, think, pray. The right path will become clear. Later, as Sam settled into the guest room and Hana and Grace slept in Kenji's childhood bedroom, he contemplated the unexpected turn their journey had taken. He had fulfilled his promise. Hana and Grace were safe in America, reunited with Kenji's family, but the future remained unwritten. Could they build a life here in California, help the elder Sakamotos reclaim their farm, create a home where Grace would know both sides of her heritage? Sleep came slowly, his mind filled with possibilities. The next week passed in a blur of activity. Sam and Mr. Sakamoto worked from dawn till dusk, assessing the farm's condition, repairing irrigation systems, pruning neglected trees. Though far from his Pennsylvania roots, Sam found familiar comfort in the rhythms of agricultural life. You know farming, Mr. Sakamoto observed, as they replaced broken posts in the vineyard. Not just the work, but the feeling of it. Sam nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. Grew up with dirt under my nails, he replied. Different crops, same principles. Meanwhile, Hana and Mrs. Sakamoto tended the vegetable garden, cared for Grace, and gradually built a relationship that transcended their different backgrounds. The older woman taught Hana traditional Japanese recipes, shared stories of Kenji's childhood, and showed endless patience with baby Grace. She has a strong spirit, Mrs. Sakamoto said proudly, as Grace grabbed for a bright cloth toy. Like her father, like her mother too. In the evenings, they gathered on the porch, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains gold and purple. It was during one such evening that Mr. Sakamoto broached the subject they had all been considering. I have removed the for sale sign, he announced. If you wish to stay, to make this farm your home, there is a place for you here. Sam looked at Hana, leaving the decision to her. This was Kenji's home, his heritage. Her choice carried more weight than his. Hana gazed out at the land, golden in the setting sun. It is beautiful here, she said softly. I can feel Kenji in every tree, every vine. She turned to Sam. But what of your home? Your brother? My brother has his own family, Sam replied. He'd understand. He reached for her hand. Home isn't a place, Hana. It's people. You and Grace are my home now. Mrs. Sakamoto dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. You honor our son's memory, she told them both. Not by living in grief, but by building something new from what was broken. Then it's settled, Mr. Sakamoto said, satisfaction in his voice. We will work together. The farm will live again. That night, lying in his narrow bed, Sam felt a contentment he hadn't known since before the war. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be prejudice to face, hard work to rebuild the farm, legal matters to settle, but they would face it together, as a family. The small church sat at the edge of Fresno, its white steeple bright against the September sky. Inside, sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, painting rainbow patterns across the simple wooden pews. Sam stood at the altar, heart racing beneath his borrowed suit. Beside him, his best man, Mr. Sakamoto, proud in his Sunday best, offered a reassuring nod. The organ music shifted, signaling the moment they'd all been waiting for. The congregation rose, turning toward the church doors as they opened to admit the bride. Hana appeared, radiant in a simple white dress, Mrs. Sakamoto had altered from her own wedding gown. She carried a bouquet of late summer roses from the farm garden, but the most beautiful sight was her smile, confident, joyful, full of promise. Mrs. Sakamoto walked beside her, carrying 3-month-old Grace in a tiny dress that matched her mother's. The baby gurgled happily, reaching for the flower petals that lined the aisle. As Hana reached the altar and took Sam's hands in hers, the past and future seemed to merge. Grief and joy, endings and beginnings, all part of the same human story. The pastor, a kind man who had welcomed them without judgment, began the ceremony that would make official what their hearts already knew. "Dearly beloved," he intoned, "we are gathered here today." The words washed over Sam like a blessing. He saw not just Hana before him, but all those who had brought them to this moment. Grace, his late wife, whose spirit of kindness lived on in his heart. Kenji, whose love for Hana had opened the path they now walked. Father Joseph and Madame Lefebvre, whose courage had given them shelter when they needed it most. The villagers who had stood against hatred. Lieutenant Brooks, who had seen beyond regulations to human need. And now, the Sakamotos, who had opened their hearts to an unexpected future, choosing love over bitterness, hope over despair. "I do," Sam said when the moment came, his voice strong and sure. "I do," echoed Hana, tears of joy sparkling in her eyes. As they exchanged simple gold bands, gifts from the Sakamotos, who had salvaged them before internment, Sam felt a circle completing. Not an ending, but a continuation. Love finding new paths while honoring what came before. "What God has joined together, let no one put asunder," the pastor declared. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Their kiss was gentle, reverent, a promise made in the shadow of war now fulfilled in the light of peace. As they turned to face the small congregation, neighbors who had welcomed them, veterans who understood sacrifice, friends who had chosen understanding over prejudice, Sam felt a sense of rightness settle deep in his soul. Outside, autumn sunshine bathed the church steps as they emerged as husband and wife. Grace, now in Mr. Sakamoto's arms, reached for her mother and new father, her face alight with baby joy. "Our family," Sam said, gathering them both close, complete at last. Mrs. Sakamoto appeared beside them, her weathered face serene. "Not complete," she corrected gently, "just beginning." The years that followed proved her right. The Sakamoto Taylor farm flourished under their combined care, becoming known for its sweet peaches, quality grapes, and the warm welcome extended to all visitors regardless of background. Grace grew into a bright, curious child who balanced easily between cultures, helping her Japanese grandparents tend the traditional garden behind the house, then racing to help Sam with the farm equipment he'd introduced from Pennsylvania. She grew up hearing stories of both her fathers, Kenji, whose photograph still held a place of honor in their home, and Sam, who taught her to ride, to swim, to face the world with courage and kindness. "How did you find Mama?" she asked Sam one evening when she was 7, sitting on the porch steps as the day's work ended. Sam smiled, meeting Hana's eyes across the yard where she hung laundry with Mrs. Sakamoto. "I didn't find her," he said. "We found each other, when we both needed it most." "Because of the war?" Grace persisted, old enough now to understand some of the story. "The war separated people," Sam explained, "but sometimes, in strange ways, it also brought them together." He ruffled her dark hair, so like her mother's. "The important thing is what we build in peacetime. That's the real victory." Grace nodded thoughtfully. "Like our farm," Sam agreed. "Like our family." Later that night, as Grace slept and the elder Sakamotos retired to their rooms at the back of the house, Sam and Hana sat on the porch, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. 10 years ago today," Hana said softly, "I was in a prison camp, certain my life was over." Sam took her hand, feeling the calluses earned from hard work, alongside the softness that was uniquely Hana. "And now?" Hana's smile held all the answer he needed, but she spoke the words anyway. Now I know life was just beginning. She leaned against his shoulder, fitting perfectly in the space that seemed made for her. Every day, I thank whatever fate brought us together on that muddy road. Not fate, Sam replied. Choice. We chose to help each other, to trust each other, to build something new from the ashes of war. He kissed her gently. We're still choosing, every day. As night deepened around the farmhouse, bringing cool relief after a hot Central Valley day, they sat together in contented silence. Inside, their daughter dreamed peacefully. In the fields beyond, crops planted with hope grew toward harvest. War had brought them together across oceans and cultures, through danger and loss, but it was love, steady, resilient, freely chosen, that had brought them home.